Looking at the history of the market cycles and what we know even from like a macro perspective, there's a lot of things that are moving against the markets, to be quite honest. It's amazing that Bitcoin's even hit 100K, to be honest, when we look at things like liquidity cycles and, what's the rate of cash coming into the system. I still think that's going to see an upswing, especially when we come into like the inauguration next year and the budgets being defined.
If you do have some exposure to the gaming sector through your portfolio, be patient with it. So I've got a Ronin token and it's probably underperforming compared to the rest of my portfolio, but it's one of those things where we'll eventually see a gaming narrative play out and it will likely do well on the back of that. So I'm kind of just holding on to it for that reason alone. Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. This is the first episode of 2025, so Happy New Year everyone.
Happy New Year.
We are not recording this in 2025.
Absolutely not.
So please bear with us. But look, as the time of this coming out, I will be in Guatemala in South America. So unfortunately, I didn't bring the podcast gear over there, so we're recording ahead of time. But that's all right, plenty to unpack here today, Pav.
Yeah, there is. And I'm pretty keen for this one. I know we're kind of joking before the show. We're very not prepared for this one, but I think we're just organically going to come up with hopefully some useful insights and just even recollect on some things we did right and wrong.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
Let's see how we go.
Yeah.
But Pav,
you sound so confident.
Oh,
Don't give it
so
away.
Confident. First of all, you spent some time down in Cricket New South Wales filming some videos with David Warner and the likes.
Or not David. Am I allowed to say?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this should be out by the time.
So SwiftX doing some major sponsorships with some Sydney BBL teams, the Sixers and the Thunder. Class outfit, amazing facility. Can I just say they just recently finished building a whole new training ground for Cricket New South Wales. It's huge. It's gorgeous. So we've got to have a tour as well. But we did some content with them. It's going to show during, I think, like the halftime shows during the BBL series, which I know we're both big fans of during the end of the year. So
I can't wait to watch that.
Oh, it's going to be
you on the big screen.
No, hopefully it comes across all right. But can I be honest? I was surprised with everyone saying, "Oh no, I don't know much about crypto," and everyone knew about everything.
But what do you mean, the players?
The players, yeah.
What are we talking? Like what?
They knew what they could I reckon the worst question to be asked is, what is cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
And everyone was able to just name drop blockchain technology, digital assets, digital currency.
Okay.
I was just like, man, that's impressive.
Must have been listened to the potty.
Maybe.
But look,
sorry,
we got plenty to. No, that's all right. That's all right. We got plenty to unpack today. So we're gonna take a bit of a different approach to this one as we're recording ahead of time.
Yeah. Why don't we let the listeners know finally what we're talking about?
All right. So we might take a bit of a different approach this episode. So we're gonna look back at the 2021 bull market. What I like to say about that is that was my first proper experience in crypto, and in my opinion, it was the craziest period of 12 months in the market I've seen in this market. I know, Pav, you've been in crypto a little bit longer than me.
Well, I've been in longer, but I've been in since the 2017-18 top. I literally bought Bitcoin at the peak at that point. So for me, it was just more like a painful education. So it was my first bull run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a crazy time. We started at SwiftX. Things were just, I think we were onboarding about 10 people per week as like staff. And, we were getting 7,000 signups a day some days. So it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But look, we've started to see some sort of similarities to what we're seeing currently in 2024. Obviously, we had the Bitcoin halving earlier this year. And so we want to try and see if we can, draw any similarities to that bull market and try and use that to predict what might come in 2025. As I've said before, and I know you love this one, history doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme. So we're going to take a look and try and break it all down for you guys.
I want to make a drinking game where we have to take a shot every time you say that.
I reckon it's been about 3 times in the history of this podcast, but you just love to call it out. First of all, okay, so Bitcoin halving, that happened in April 2020, and so we saw that earlier this year. So we actually saw a Bitcoin all-time high before the halving this year, but of course that was likely due, or mainly due to the ETFs
lots
being
of
rolled
speculation, like end of 2023, 2023, that there was. It just became materially more and more confident that there was an ETF coming, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think everyone just front ran that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. But ever since then, Bitcoin kind of cooled off, and we've been trading sideways for a little bit up until now. Like since Trump got elected president. We saw Bitcoin rip to new all-time highs literally on that day. And then, we saw 100K literally last week, early December. So kind of similar to 2020. So we saw a Bitcoin hit its new all-time high from its previous cycle in 2017 or 18 in that December 2020 period. We also saw Bitcoin dominance. So that's the percentage that Bitcoin owns of the crypto market cap.
Yep.
That topped out in December. And then from there, it was downhill. So that topped out around 70%. Now, we've seen somewhat of a similarity here. When we're recording this last week in early December,
Yep.
Bitcoin hit a dominance rating of 61%.
60? Wasn't it a bit higher?
No, last time I checked, it was about 61%.
It was in the low 60s, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what my question is to you, Pav, is like 2020, have we seen Bitcoin dominance top out at around about this 61% mark? And from here, is it going downhill, whereas, and now like the altcoins will take over?
My personal opinion, no. And I'm happy to be wrong on this one because the worst case scenario is we just have an alt season from here. But I still think, again, looking at the history of the market cycles and what we know even from like a macro perspective, there's a lot of things that are moving against the markets, to be quite honest, it's amazing that Bitcoin's even hit 100K, to be honest, when we look at things like liquidity cycles and, what's the rate of cash coming into the system. I still think that's going to see an upswing, especially when we come into like the inauguration next year and the budgets being defined again as well. We saw both Japan and China now announce their stimulus packages. So when the US does that, I think that's like checkmate in terms of like the markets having the fuel to go a lot higher. I personally am still waiting for that big exuberant move I think I've spoke about in previous podcasts where we probably see Bitcoin really just steal and suck the liquidity and take all the market share. If you wanted to liken it to something similar to like what XRP did in recent weeks, where we just saw that move and the rest of the market kind of not. I think Bitcoin's going to have its spotlight. I think that'll result in dominance heading closer to 70%. And I think that's probably like, if I had to put a number on it, January to February, I think that's when we start to see that sort of cool off. And then we see all the altcoins start to really heave and hoe. And I think that's when we start to see a downtrend in that dominance indicator that you were talking about.
Interesting take.
Yeah. And that's my hot take, because I still think there's a few things that aren't quite going right for us in terms of the engine running, again, from the macro perspective. So that's why I still have that thesis.
Right, I like the take. It's I can't say I fully agree with it. I just see from a personal perspective, like talking to friends and family, like everyone's just so thirsty for altcoins. Like no one really sees Bitcoin as, the one that's going to make them at 3x or 4x.
It has been different this cycle for that.
Yeah, and I think altcoins are becoming more mainstream. People are hearing the likes of Solana, Ethereum, XRP, and they're not so much looking at Bitcoin where they could get like a 50% return on investment this year or something like that. They want to do that 3, 4, 5x, right?
Yeah. I think one thing just to quickly touch on that point too is I think we spoke about it ages ago, like unit bias.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Bitcoin, 100K, instantly too expensive for me.
Yeah.
And then you look at something like Peanut, worth a couple of cents, and it's moved a couple 100%. Because if people are just throwing in $100, $200, $300, they're going to go for that more asymmetric risk opportunity.
Yeah.
But again, there's, we see like the US strategic Bitcoin reserve come to life and other countries start to do the same. I mean, again, liquidity will just go straight to Bitcoin. And that's good because then it just means a bigger alt season is kind of what I'm hoping.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that comes from the stock market where you're buying whole units of stocks rather than like fractionalized units. Whereas in crypto, you can do that. You can buy 0.00001 of a Bitcoin if you want to. So maybe there's some education needed around that aspect. But look, let's go to January 2021. So this is when things started to get real crazy. And this is obviously where, we can't compare because we're not in January 2025 yet. Actually, this episode does come out there, but from when we're recording, we're not there yet. So what did we see? We saw an Ethereum all-time high. And then we saw the global crypto market cap also hit a new all-time high from the 2017 bull run. Mm-hmm. We've actually already hit that. So I guess that's probably comes down to, the front run at the start of the year where we saw the ETFs come in. So money was already started flowing in earlier this cycle than it did last cycle. And so we've hit a global crypto all-time high. We've hit that Bitcoin all-time high. We haven't hit that Ethereum all-time high. So I'm wondering from your perspective, do you think we'll hit that in this month of January?
I mean, I'd like to say yes, because I just can't see why not. If I had to pick, it'd be Q1 next year for sure. Okay. But yeah, I think worst case February is kind of what you'd be hoping for. Only because if we don't start to see that momentum, I think start, towards the end of the year and pick up in the early January, something's not right.
Yeah.
So it'd be more cause for concern if we're not at least moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, a few things to call out. So January is usually a really good month, even better than December on average if you look at the Bitcoin price over its whole history. So I think on average it's up about 14%. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that. But then you also look at the things happening in January. So Trump's getting sworn in on January 20th, I believe. So that might have some sort of bullish catalyst.
It's usually around the same time they have the budget deficit and they have to raise the debt ceiling, which is always seen upon as a real negative thing. But it basically just enables them to just go and print more money. So I think that sort of bodes really nicely with what you're saying.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And also what we saw in January 2021 is like DeFi all-time high. Was
it really?
Sorry, I'll repeat that. Yeah. And what we also saw in January 2021 is the all-time, or like the global DeFi market cap hit a new all-time high.
Yeah, okay.
One thing to call out there is, DeFi was pretty new in that era. So, it hadn't really been discovered yet. Whereas now, like where, it's been around forever and it's already hit this all-time high. Yeah. I think a couple of months ago, maybe even in November. So
yeah, I think the DeFi market back then went mental in the middle of 2020 and then it cooled off as Bitcoin just went vertical and then it came back to life in January when it hit that high. So, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And looking forward to February. So February, we saw altcoin market all-time high. So that's taking out Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then that's when we saw the first of Elon's tweets, I believe.
Is that really February?
No, that's wrong, actually. He didn't tweet until April. So March is when sort of like the layer one started really taking off. So the likes of Polkadot, Cardano, BNB, Chainlink. Chainlink's not really layer one, but also like Stellar as well. Like some of those older legacy coins that we call now, like those started to really hit their straps.
Do you remember that BNB season?
Yes, dude, it was crazy.
Yeah. So for those that maybe aren't aware, so the same way we've been sort of experiencing the Solana meme coin craze, we saw the exact same thing happen on the BNB network. So BNB at that time, they were the real, I guess, challenger brand to Ethereum. Yeah. Having still essential, well, I guess, different in terms of like tokenomics and stuff, but the gas fees were minimal at that point in time, like 5 cents, whereas Ethereum was still costing you like $100 a transaction. Yeah. So pretty similar if you draw upon it to Solana to now. And everyone was on the equivalent of like a deck screener, looking for new launches, riding up huge gains, and then also riding them back to zero. But even the BNB ecosystem that time, like there was just some like, because I think what a lot of people did was they looked at the fundamentals within the Ethereum ecosystem. So you had like your DEX, you had your lending platforms, just bread and butter utilities on an ecosystem. You went and looked for the same things on the BNB chain. So I think from memory, there was Venus, there was Pancake Swap. Yep. Even those two alone, I think, brought in like 50 to 100x returns for a lot of people. It was crazy.
Yeah, I had a few interesting times on Pancake Swap. It was just like so fun to use, and using the DEX for the first time, I was like, look at this thing.
Yeah, what's going on?
There's pancakes everywhere.
Pancakes everywhere.
No, and even still, like BNB, I think went from like $40 in like a couple of months to like $600-700 US.
It was mental.
It was ridiculous.
It was mental. I was watching it from $30 still. I was like, when is this thing slowing down?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Crazy, hey. Okay, so April is when Elon tweeted for the first time. So he tweeted like Dogecoin might be my favorite cryptocurrency. That's what really sent Doge to the moon. And that's when it entered the top 10 by market cap, and people started really taking it seriously as like an investment opportunity, more so than just a meme coin. Yep. And I think that's sort of when we started to see, the major headlines around the world. I think given that like we're a more mature market now, like we'll probably get that a little bit earlier. We have
been running ahead, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. And there's there's a million meme coins out there, so it's not so much like focused on one. Like at that time, I think it was literally just Dogecoin was the only meme coin on the market. Now look at us. You talked about Peanut before. We got Pepe. Everyone's trying to launch their own meme coin and basically make a bag overnight.
Yeah. Question for you then, because I think you're more in tune with this than I am. So we had like someone like Elon as a personality cause this sort of ruckus. Yeah. Now it's kind of like expected that he's going to do something.
Yeah.
What kind of personalities do you think will be coming into the scene, tweeting about crypto and causing the same sort of reaction?
I don't know if it's ever going to be the same again, because Elon got announced as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency as Doge. I thought that would send it. Maybe it was already priced in, but we didn't really see any price movement from that. He also posted, that his son is the Doge son and he's the Doge father, and like nothing real. So I think everyone's kind of just used to the fact that Elon's going to tweet about Doge. In terms of other people, I genuinely don't know if the market's going to react like that anymore. Like, unless like Trump tweets about like some meme coin, I'm sure that would send it running. But I don't know. I just don't think he would.
Okay.
What do you reckon?
I still think it'll happen, but I'm just wondering like what type of influencer or what type of celebrity does it. That's all. Because it has to be someone, I think, that has that sort of pulling power like Elon did. I don't know. I'm not really across the social scenes as you know.
He did the same with GameStop, right? And then because that was before Doge, he tweeted like Game Stonk.
Did he really?
Yeah, and sent it flying. Yeah. And then he did the same with Doge. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe like a Jeff Bezos, but I highly doubt he's going to be tweeting about Peanut anytime soon.
Yeah, sorry to derail you.
No, that's all good, mate. I think we're trying our best here. May 2021 is when we had that intense pullback. So that's when the craziness really topped out, and then we had that massive pullback. And I think if you look at like the global crypto market cap, we saw a pullback of like 40%.
It was huge.
So that really shook a lot of people out of the market. People thought, okay, that's the cycle over, selling off.
Fundamentally too, this was the first cycle where we had more derivatives and sort of leverage be available to the majority of the market. Like the previous cycle was just all spot trading. It's like while you still saw this craziness, I think a lot of people in this case were just liquidated. They just lost all their money, which I think we just eclipsed it most recently in that pullback on the 10th of December. So even to date, that was still one of the most wretched pullbacks the market had ever seen. It was pretty quick. Yeah. Elevated down big time.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Yeah. But even still, like I think some of the altcoins started running in that period.
As soon as it recovered?
Yeah, because it recovered pretty quickly.
It was like 30 straight green days, I think I remember. Because I remember we did like a news piece on it.
I remember it crashed because China banned crypto for like the fifth time. It did. It
really?
did. It was literally on the back of that. And then also the fact that Tesla said they're no longer going to accept Bitcoin purchases because Bitcoin is non-environmentally friendly. Sorry.
Yeah. Which I think was before Elon started tweeting about Doge and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But it just goes to show like there was just that overall sentiment that there was broader acceptance of crypto.
Yeah, well, I guess like Tesla was one of the key institutions or companies that was adopting crypto, and then all of a sudden they're saying, no, we don't like it. And so that shook the market a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I guess the preceding months were just crazy on top of crazy on top of crazy. Like we saw that gaming narrative play out after Facebook rebranded to Meta. We saw like the metaverse tokens go nuts. Like Sandbox, I think, was like literally the best performing coin of that whole cycle.
And Mana was doing what? You said Mana just before?
Yeah, no, I didn't. But Decentraland, Mana, don't really know what they're doing these days.
It's pretty quiet.
I think at one point, like in the bear market, Decentraland had like 19 active players, which was pretty poor. Considering at one point it was like worth multiple billions of dollars.
One thing we didn't talk about was Axie Infinity.
Yeah, Axie.
Can we just talk about that as just a little benchmark of how crypto can kind of change things very quickly?
Sure.
So for those people that don't know Axie Infinity, how would you best describe it? Like
it's like a little PvP, Pokemon type game.
Mobile game. It was mobile, right?
Nah, I don't think it was mobile.
It was on your computer?
Yeah, I think it was on your computer where you could earn like tokens, and it was quite popular. Place like the Philippines, because people were earning like basically more than the minimum wage there. So it was a way for people to earn passive income.
So this is kind of how wild. I think for me, it's just like, this was just like, how the heck is this happening? Exactly what you said. They had people in certain countries that were able to make more playing this player versus player online game than they could working a job.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where there was like a more premium account that you could get, but required you to put up, let's say, $1,000 to like buy an NFT to then get more rewards.
Sure.
So you had people from then other countries buying these NFTs or some sort of premium account, and then getting someone from, let's say, the Philippines to play it for them. And then they were doing like a higher rev share. To me, it's just like, what the heck?
No, it makes sense. I did something similar with like another game that was more low key, where like you bought an NFT, and then because I didn't really have time to play the game, but I wanted to earn like passive income through the game, you basically, it was like a process of lending your NFT, which was like this monkey ape thing, to participate in the game. I think it was some guy in like Poland.
Yeah.
Wasn't really worth it in the end, but it was
I remember
just
doing
an
the same
interesting
thing.
Yeah, it was just an interesting process of going through that.
But it goes to show how like quickly disruption just turns into opportunity, and I think things that people aren't expecting just happen.
Yeah.
So I kind of would say like I'll be waiting to see something similar, like just what the heck, like this cycle, what that's going to look like.
Well, my question is to you is, you know, we're going to have lots of different narratives that play out. I'm sure we'll have an AI narrative, a meme coin narrative. What do you think is going to be like? Do you see there being sort of like a certain like phase that we'll see each of these narratives? Like last bull market in November is when we saw that metaverse gaming narrative start to play out. So that was literally the last one that played out, along with NFTs on top of that. Do you think it will follow sort of a similar sort of trajectory?
I think fundamentally and principally, any sort of project that requires mass adoption or like volume, like in terms of active users, that will play out later in the cycle.
Yeah.
Because if you think of it, if the players aren't there and the ecosystems only thrive when there's community and like users actually doing stuff with each other, how could that thrive like right now? Like there's no one really doing anything in like, let's take that Axie Infinity example. Like if it was a player versus player environment, you obviously want rich players. It's almost like liquidity to some degree.
Yeah.
So then there's like an active, it drives that sort of demand for those assets up a little bit higher. So I still think gaming, etc., anything where you require a community or lots of people to come in, new peoples particularly, I still would be looking at the back end of next year if I had to guess.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to call out that, you know, if you do have some exposure to the gaming sector through your portfolio, like be patient with it. So I've got a Ronin token that's probably makes up, I don't know, less than 5% of my portfolio, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably underperforming compared to the rest of my portfolio, but it's one of those things where I know it will eventually see a gaming narrative play out, and it will likely do well on the back of that. So I'm kind of just holding on to it for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Is it a bit early? Potentially, but you know, I'm happy to sit and wait on that one.
And that's where I think we've always talked about the infrastructure being the place to start, because that will probably garner more interest, even from a speculation perspective, like it has in the past. And then the individual projects might catch the tailwinds of that. Same with like Solana, and whenever that goes, we see Bonk or Jupiter run with it. You know, it's kind of like one supports the other.
Yeah.
One's more correlated to Bitcoin, which would be Solana.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also in November is when we saw the entire crypto market top out.
Yeah,
and
what a
Bitcoin
time.
Hit its all-time high, and then from there we didn't see it until earlier this year.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, there's a lot of speculation around Twitter and even just in the SwiftX office that people are saying we reckon there could be a local top around March, April, May, similar to the last cycle, and then we might see the market top out in around October, November. What's your take on that?
Again, I think crypto is like one of the best expressions of the macro environment. And we do see a cooling off in things like liquidity come April, May, June. There is that lull period. So I would be like interested to see, like, is it different this time? I think you got to be open, like keep open-minded, but at the same time, you've got to have yourself a goal for your portfolio. So I know for me, like if you know, we're looking back at history, we're comparing how things have gone so far, it's pretty close. As you say, it's been rhyming pretty nicely. Yeah. So if we get to like April and similar things are happening, like that same sort of good news, I feel like I personally will be at least shaving something off the table, quite considerably as well, probably because I had the gentleman's entry of back end of 2022. I was buying Bitcoin, so for me, it only makes sense to not wish for higher for like too much longer. Yeah, your other question was back end of 2025.
Yeah, October, November is what I'm hearing a lot of people say. So.
Yeah, like Q4 has been from the outset, from a data perspective, very good for on-risk markets globally. So again, I don't see why crypto wouldn't fall in that bucket again. So I would be expecting the same thing again. I know for certain, like last cycle, as much as like I was aware that, you know, you don't want to be an idiot, you want to like get out, I was still looking at the November, the way the market was looking. Because if you look at it on a chart, how Bitcoin's performed every other cycle, it's been what everyone sort of kept referring to as like a blow-off top, where the market just goes crazy, and that gives you like an opportunity to get out. If you look at 2021, it was just like we literally took out that high from like, was it March or April? May in 2021, and then it just went boop, and then boop, and then that was it. Like top was in, and it was like this tiny little candle on a weekly. So, and then I was discussing with, I guess, a few people in the office and also just on like socials, and like, oh, look, this could be a top, but it doesn't look like it. It's not a blow off top, right? So again, like in the same way we talk about things to be the same, I think you should expect them to look completely different at the same time as well. And that's where like having that plan, not getting too greedy, I think plays into it quite well. And I think we talked about it as well back in the early episodes when we covered the ETFs to death, how when the gold ETF came online, the gold chart looked exactly like Bitcoin. ETF launched and then it just went vertical for like 12 years. So will that happen for Bitcoin? Maybe. But I mean, I still don't think I'd be upset if I took profit and then waited for that to play out and just re-enter, right? Because if you have that long-term conviction and the market has it as well, maybe it does keep going, for a good decade, like style rally. Because it's
that's what I want to try and unpack a little bit, because we've got a different like environment this time around,
totally
right?
Different.
Like we're talking about the US government potentially buying 5,000 Bitcoin a day. Like that just increases the demand for Bitcoin tenfold, right?
There's even this, they're like equivalent of a super fund. They're 401ks. They're all purchasing 3% allocation.
Exactly. The appetite is just so much greater. It's not like just a speculative asset that you look at like, oh, I'm just going to make quick profit in like a 12-month period. It's something that you look to hold for a long time.
And you got Michael Saylor. He just bought another $2 billion like yesterday.
Of course he did. So, but I guess like, do you think this sort of 4-year cycle that we've come to know from crypto, do you think that's going to end at some stage, and this could potentially be the last of its kind, like this, what we're in right now?
I think it'll be always cyclical, the same way everything else is. I do think until it's not, everything has been following global liquidity. So like as cash becomes more available in the system, so like you can look at M2, the rate of change of that as a key metric. I don't think we should expect it to change until the market tells us it's changing. So I would probably still be looking at those sort of indicators as like a leading reason as to should the market keep going or should it not. I personally would love it to not ever come down again. Like what if we had that, ultimate entry while the whole world was asleep and they finally caught up?
Yeah.
I know like everyone's just looking for that sort of indication as well. Being early adopters, that's kind of like half the thing, just watching everyone else start to adopt it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But I still think if I had to, like, again, from my own perspective, like if I was ever going to speculate like that, I would probably look at my portfolio, understand which assets I did purchase at what I would perceive as pretty low and sensible entries, and probably just keep a portion as like a long term. At the end of the day, like everyone's portfolio means something different to them. So mine is very much like growth. Once I grow this, I kind of want to put something aside to, go and buy a house and things like that.
Yep. I
can't really stomach it going up, going down to then have to wait for it to go up again, if that makes any sense. So realizing those games is like a big part of my strategy.
Makes sense, mate. And like, I don't want to sit around for 2.5 years like we have in the past, like bear market where nothing's happening, especially when you're working it, right? So it's one of those things where, but like if the market is going to go crazy and meme coins are doing, ridiculous percentages in a day and returns, like that's probably something that we'd have to give up as well if we were to sort of mature as a market as well. So I guess, you take the good with the bad. So
yeah. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I think like when you look at stock markets, the cycle's around 10 years, right? Like we have like a really healthy, like we have obviously corrections and pullbacks, but like we have sort of that market crash every 10 to 12 years, usually around like a global recession. I'm just wondering if the crypto market starts to emulate the stock market a little bit more, particularly with, ETFs available on to, institutions on traditional stock markets and allowing people to institutions to gain exposure to crypto via that avenue. So I think like it could change, but we were saying this last cycle in 2021.
So because last cycle, we just talked about this before the show. It actually was the first cycle we saw major institutions jump in.
We even saw countries adopting
El Salvador.
Like El Salvador.
I think Japan
Bitcoin.
Even to some degree was saying
there were multiple countries looking at crypto. More institutions were getting into it than ever, MicroStrategy, for example. And we still saw that, 1.5 year period of bullish and then to
75% down.
Yep. Exactly.
What if it went to 50%? Like that's still less than the previous cycles, but it's still
maybe the swings are less aggressive. Like maybe that's how it starts off.
To me, that's what a maturing market 100% is. Like the volatility leaves, so you lose the upside, but you also lose the downside. And we've seen that with Bitcoin, right? Like the gains have been less and less every cycle. So, I don't have the answer. I would say like I'm not expecting to, but at the same time, I'm happy to be wrong on this one, but still walk away with something to then to have to redeploy. Yeah.
That's why we're here, mate.
That's why we're here.
We want to walk away with something.
We learnt our lessons from
hopefully
last cycle.
Multiple millions of dollars. But
and a smile.
And a smile, yeah. Got to have fun while doing it. All right, well, we might wrap that one up there, Pav. A bit of a different one today. Not sure if we'll do that one again, but I thought it was all right.
I think it still turned out okay.
Yeah, no, I think we did all right.
Just putting things into context of like month on month what happened was just nice to walk through that.
Yeah.
Sure, there's lots of listeners as well that probably honestly been listening to us for maybe since those months in 2021.
Yeah.
We were just seeing those good news stories, and I think it's important to reflect on it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Not to get too deep.
Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Obviously, this is the first episode of 2025, so we are looking to go bigger and better this year, obviously with the market conditions looking very strong. So,
and we've also got a new set, so we have to step it up.
Yeah, exactly. We got to step it up big time.
Yeah.
So we got major plans for next year. So make sure you watch the potty on YouTube or you listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to get our regular updates and awesome guests.
Yeah. Keen
as a bean.
All right. Happy 2025 and
see you next time.
See you next time. Yeah.